Hello and welcome to tonight's podcast. We are joined by a couple of wonderful guests. We're one short this week, but that's okay. We'll push on. Our topic this week is you want to do what? And we'll be talking about dealing with party craziness in the most positive manner. So we're going to kind of set what the heck we're talking about and all that fun stuff. You guys know the deal, but you don't know our fantastic guests. So I'm going to get them introduced and give them their promo time to start us off. So we're going to start ladies first. Miss Sally, I always get your last name wrong. I said Peterson, right?
Peterson.
Without a T. It's
Yeah, that's right. Peterson.
So, who are you? Where can you find you? All that fun stuff. Fill us in.
So my name is Sally Peterson. I'm the founder of Global Citizen Life, where we help people diversify globally around the world, whether that's tax reduction, asset protection, moving abroad, all of those types of things. And my website is globalcitizenlife.org.
Easy peasy and to the point. I love it. Anything else you want to
Right.
throw in there? Any projects you're working on currently that you want to hype up?
Well, I do have a summit coming up, but the dates are to be determined yet. Probably end of June is what we're aiming for. So people can kind of just keep an eye on the website, and we'll have that updates in there for sure.
Fantastic. All right, moving on to our second wonderful guest, Jeremy. Who are you? What you do? What's your whole name?
Hola, ¿cómo estás? This is Jeremy Roadruck. I am the only Jeremy Roadruck in the entire world. There's only about 300 Roadrucks on the planet, and I'm the only Jeremy. So there it is.
Wow.
I'm so easy to find. Just Google me. I'm the only me, which is a good thing. And I am a bunch of stuff, but one of my cool things is I wrote the only parenting book with a money back guarantee. It says so right there on the back. So the next time someone's like, "Oh, kids don't come with owner's manuals," it's like, no, but I know where you can get one because it says right there on the cover, the owner's manual of children for parents, grandparents, caregivers, guardians, teachers, and coaches of children of all ages. And it's all about how to create win-win games. How do you feel warm, big, and happy? How do they feel warm, big, and happy? And I'll give you guys like the coolest thing right now, which is your kids don't know you're anything other than awesome until you tell them otherwise. They just think you're the coolest because you can reach the top shelf and you can open stuff and you can get things. And they worship the ground we walk on until we give them reasons not to, or until we give them justifications to think we're snail snot. So start from a good place. It's easier to maintain versus I'm direct and I got to get up there. So I do a lot of coaching around mindset, relationship, communication, parenting, primarily business owner men. And Sally, you'll appreciate this because all of my coaching is free because in the US, it's a tax write-off because we're going to talk communication, leadership style. We're going to talk about personality types. We're going to do some assessments. So even though it's personal relationship stuff and like divorce-proof marriage and amazing things, it's also essentially free because you can claim it in the US tax code. Boom. So there we go.
Gotta love tax write-offs. One of the best things about being an entrepreneur is the silly
Heck
stuff you get
yeah.
to go, hey, I went on a trip and talked to 7 people about my business. Aha! It's writing it off, baby. Moving on.
Hey, I did a YouTube clip, and the clothes that I'm wearing are part of my uniform for my business. So now everything I buy to wear is a write-off.
Dang, I gotta tell my wife that.
But
Yeah,
there's
every
even a
week.
better way to do that. If you have your corporation in a no tax jurisdiction country, you don't have to worry about write-offs and keeping receipts and spending money.
That's fair.
Touche.
That's what I help people with. So then, because those receipts fade, you have to make sure that you're scanning them because you can be
Mhm.
audited for this year and 2, 3, 4 years from now, and you have to make sure
Yeah,
you have those
7.
receipts. But if you're in a no tax jurisdiction or something that's low, you don't even have to worry about keeping those receipts.
Yeah, there's just total sidebar, but there's like apps like TaxBot that lets you take pictures of
Mhm.
your receipts. Then you can also log the meeting, who was there, what you discussed, and it
Perfect.
will give you it'll give you a thing for when you're driving to track mileage too, so you can deduct that if that's
Great.
part of your bag. So, and
Mhm.
that's $20 a month, so that's a write-off too because it's a business expense for software. Yeah.
Man,
Right. No,
I'm
perfect.
over
That's
here like
perfect.
usually I cut y'all off at this point, but this is great. This is gold mine over here. All right, but I am going to push us forward on our topic. So
Game the system.
the uh, the topic that we're talking about is dealing with party craziness, right? And how that applies to people's lives and who they're dealing with is completely different, on a craziest level. My people's craziness are people whining and complaining that their character got stabbed in the back when they weren't expecting it, right? And it was 100% their fault because they didn't look behind them for the last 45 minutes and they were being loud AF, right? That is
Mhm.
figuring out how to positively add consequences to a fun, silly game, right? For you guys, it might be a totally different thing. So with your quote unquote party craziness, what is an example of dealing with craziness in your life? We're gonna start with Sally. Sally, what's crazy look like to you?
Oh
And
gosh.
I'm gonna
I mean,
caveat to make it a little easier for you. We're gonna
yeah.
start on a personal level, like a singular person craziness. What does that look like for you when you're dealing with your people?
So is it me that's being crazy or is it other people being crazy?
We can be both, but let's start with other people and we'll get back to you because there's a whole other side of like being a DM and understanding how when you're being the Yahoo, right? So when other people are being
Right.
the Yahoo,
Well, when it's other people, I mean, I'm a very direct, straight to the point. I don't sugarcoat things. So, I'll just tell it how it is, and I'll use the words put people in their place in a way if it's something I've been, and just be like, hey, you need to, calm down. This is ridiculous. Or the other part is like, well, how the hell didn't you see that coming? Like, I saw that from a mile away. What's like, how can you be so stupid?
okay. So but on that, how what does the crazy bit look? Not dealing with it per se, but how what does it look like when you start thinking, this person's getting a little crazy?
For me, so I met a girl. She was super nice and she was very talkative. Like the first time I met her, she spoke for probably 3 hours, almost nonstop. And she was always messaging me and always. And I just thought, like, that's just too much for me. I'm the type of, I can, even with my closest friends, weeks can go by. And because I travel a lot, maybe a month or something. And she was messaging like two, three, 4 times a day. And I'm like, this is just way too much. This is for me, like, this is getting out of hand. Like, I don't communicate with anybody every single day, let alone somebody messaging me, 3, 4 times a day, waiting for a response. I'm like, you're just getting too much to handle. And I know for a lot of people that's not crazy, but it's just too much for me. I'm like, I need my space. Back off.
Okay, interesting. We'll come back to that in a second. Jeremy, what about you?
Mhm.
What's crazy look like on an individual level for you for someone else, not yourself?
Yeah, I've got a lot of exposure to personality types and people in some pretty significant emotional moments. So I've got a lot of bandwidth, and I'm very good at unpacking unconscious behavior patterns, what's driving this. So, oh, that makes sense because context. However, all that being said, my daughter is this fantastic force of nature who is 9 years old and very, very creative and squirrels. And it's time to focus on school. And we're getting this big, huge story about she was supposed to be, mom was reading her a thing about history and she's supposed to be coloring the picture. But then she drew a picture on the wall and then she made up a whole story about how the person in the picture had gone to the pool and had a blanket and like this whole big thing that had nothing to do with the medieval period of time. And it was like, were you listening to any of that? The last two and a half, 3 pages? And it's like, we okay, take a deep breath, focus. Like now's not the time for the creative stuff. It's time, straight lines, dial it in, triangle. And it's like getting those non sequiturs because, our daughter is very creative and she has very intelligent parents. And it's okay. That non sequiturs and red herrings. It's like back on task, please, and trying not to be uber dork about it because I can be. So you get the kids. My favorite line. I used to teach kung fu for a long time, and I would get the 4-year-olds sharing the most randomest stuff. Thanks for sharing. Okay, and now. And it was just a quick pat on the head, moving on. And I'll use that with adults now too. Hey, thanks for sharing. That's really interesting. And then we'll move right on to the next thing. So it's a great shut up, but not break rapport while I do it.
Man, I heard you say that 3 or 4 times in our interview. I swear, no, just playing. Um, but with that, so hearing both of you, your guys' standard of craziness is obviously a little bit different. One of it is being jumpy and squirrely, and much more of the human element that can't focus, whereas the other one is hyper focus on something that you are not in the need to deal with, which are both major problems that people can deal with at the table, right? So for us on an individual level, when a player gets hyper focused on the rules or is a rules lawyer and you slightly went off key, right? This is something that they deal with all the time, or I should say they, me, other DMs, whatever, deal with all the time. Uh, it is can definitely be difficult to kind of break them off the hey, uh, shut up, right? Give them the whole hey, look, you need to be direct with things. That is a fantastic solution to those kind of problems. Being direct when there's hey, this is what we're saying we want to do, and it was supposed to be like this, and I need an answer for it. And you go, look, we're going with this, and we're pushing forward. We'll come back to that if we need to, right? It's an easy way to push through it. As for the crazy squirrel problem, another fantastical problem because we deal with a lot of creatives in our line of work. DMs especially, right? Someone will go on a role playing tangent where they're talking for 20 minutes. Well, 20 minutes of table talking is a lot for most people, right? There's 6 other people sitting at the table trying to tell their stories and do their things and have a little bit of time in the spotlight. If one person is just off in the squirrels for some reason, they need to be shut down. And again, a direct response to an individual craziness is a fantastic way to kind of focus on it. It kind of sounds like how both of you have dealt with it and how you deal with it in your own life. So that's good to hear. Secondarily, next question. Really close to the same one. Now, what do we do about group craziness when it's not just a singular person causing a problem? It's a whole bunch of people. What is it? What is it? What shifts that line from individual to group craziness? What what
I think
what swings the
sometimes
tangents? Go ahead.
sometimes it's just, kind of getting everybody to stop for a second and being like, okay, whoa, we've really kind of got off on a tangent, or that kind of, we went down a rabbit hole type thing. Let's get back and kind of refocus on the topic, the task at hand, the whatever it may be, and just kind of pull people back into to refocus and say, that's maybe more of a conversation for another time or later, depending upon the situation. If there's a group, then we're there. There's something that we're discussing or topics are trying to resolve, and it's easy to get off on a tangent and go down rabbit holes and things. But then it's just like, okay, you've got to kind of just stop it where it's at, and then kind of bring back that main focus.
Now, to focus on that for a second there, do you have a personal story that can kind of go along with that where you've kind of like seen it happen? Not necessarily dealt with it, but just seen the group divulge into the craziness that is.
Oh yeah, like lots of times, especially when you're with friends and potentially alcohol is involved, then rabbit holes it goes really, really quick that way. And I guess it also too, it's when you're having, I've been around and we're having group conversations, and whether it's talking about the big rabbit holes are religion, politics, a number of things like that, potentially like guns in the United States, because I'm originally from Canada. And so even though we can start with kind of one question to a group, to a conversation, it can go, down those rabbit holes. And then sometimes it's like, okay, we can talk about those, but let's get back to the initial question, the initial comment of what we're talking about, and whether it's the pros and cons of that, or what's going on. And again, it's just kind of regrouping and bringing people back to the original question.
Okay.
And sometimes it's maybe redefining that question a little bit more to be more specific, because sometimes we will ask a question or we'll be talking about something and we're a little bit broad, or everybody has said at some point, they're having a conversation with somebody and they say, well, you said this, and then the other person, and I've said it myself, yeah, but I didn't mean it like that. Right. And then we have to work on our conversation and our words and how we communicate what we actually mean and the right words to use.
Man, that is an excellent segue, and I'm going to use it in a little bit because that is a very key point of discussion for a little bit ahead of time. Jeremy, what about you? What's group craziness in your life?
So I've got lots of frames on that because
Okay.
when I ran kung fu stuff,
Hmm.
the youngest I taught was 3, and I had like Mighty Mites, which is 4 and 5. I had early kids, so like 7 and 9. Then you have middle school, then you have high school. And so what starts to get crazy, you get kids that are keyed in on an idea, or somebody does a thing and all of a sudden somebody's giggling and then someone else is doing it, and then they're all trying to do it and not get caught or not get noticed, and then just everybody's kind of squirreling and going sideways. So and then I worked in a corporate setting with software testing and software engineers and test versus quality assurance, and crap being thrown over the wall and not being dealt with. And then you get into these arguments over program management, and well, it'd be nice to have had that information. Oh, you mean the thing you signed off on 6 weeks ago that told you the sequence of timing and when things were going to be? That thing. I got yelled at by a manager later for shaming a project manager in a meeting because they were an a-hole and nobody else spoke up. I don't play nice sometimes. And so what I learned, like playing with all these different experiences, is like number one thing is how much rapport do you have? How much influence do you have? And so sometimes you have to align with the crazy for a second to catch it. And so you get the kids, they're talking really fast and they're really, really excited. So you've just got to kind of get with them. And then as you get with them, and then you can, hey, actually, and then as you slow down, you kind of end run them and then down regulate and they come with you. Sometimes they're all crazy and I'm just standing there. No, I'll wait. It's cool. I'll just shut up and stand here. And then you get the little kids who are like, ooh, he said shut up. Ooh. And it's like sometimes by withdrawing your energy, they notice this giant emptiness and they're like, I think we're gonna be in trouble. So it's sometimes aligning with the rapport, sometimes it's breaking the rapport, but it's to catch attention. And then how can we guide that to something else? How can we ask a question? Because the brain's wired to answer the questions it's asked, even if they make no sense. But we ask a question to hook people's minds and then redirect into a new direction. And so sometimes we can pattern interrupt either by, like I said, aligning it or interrupting it or withdrawing. And it's if the group I'm working with is more visual, I got to help them see what the thing is that I'm doing. If they're more auditory, they got to hear it the right way. So tone, timbre, pitch, speed. If they're more kinesthetic, that's where they're running down the rabbit hole and get a handle on this and put the brakes on. Let's pump the brakes. Let's put a pin in it. Let's table that. All these kinesthetic action emotions. You can actually use your hand flat to just kind of like push it down and slide it to just take the energy down, guys. Where you're opening your hands and rolling and extending, you're asking for help. And now we can go to the conceptual side and catch the idea. And again, we ground them back into the bigger conversation or the bigger context. And so it's really visual, auditory, kinesthetic, conceptual. You got 4 fundamental frameworks to kind of like impact and then either align the rapport or break the rapport to catch their attention.
So I wanna tag on that one because the way you talk with your hands is super expressive. How lots of storytellers that in our line of thing work and explain things, whether they realize they do it or not. I know I talk with my hands all the time, especially when I'm sitting down in front of a computer screen. It makes communication way easier because they can see my head jerking and whatnot. Uh, but with that, I want to ask both of you, what about when you catch an idea from when they're getting that crazy and run with it, right? You kind of already touched on this a little bit, but what are your feelings about like when that good idea pops out of the craziness, right? How do you run
Magic.
with an idea easily? Because sometimes there's a point where it's like that's their idea and I don't want to steal it, but it's really good and we need to use it.
Yeah, it's exactly the acknowledgement. I love that idea. I love what so and so just said. And you just do a comma and dot dot dot. That way you can expand on it, but you gave credit and you anchored that in for where it came from. Oh my gosh. Bill just said the coolest thing, guys. Did you catch that? I love that idea. And if we play with it, I think we could take it this way. How does that sound? How does that look? How does that feel? But how does that predicate for you guys? What's your feedback? Where could you take it next? And then you can expand that, and that kind of like an idea bomb that just opens up and explodes forward.
Nice. Okay, Sally, you look like you had some comment on that one. You have anything to add?
No, I was just in complete agreement. If somebody has a great idea, I'm like, that's a great idea. Let's go with that. Or, hey, that's a great idea. What if, and if it's a bit of a tweaking or something, and that's part of like with brainstorming. When you get together with a group of people and you're brainstorming, and some of us we throw out some not so great ideas or something, but they're not bad because those ideas make us think of other things. And then as we get going and somebody comes up, it's like, that's a great idea. What if we what do you think if we tweaked it this way or turned it that way to get other feedback to see if we can make it even better? And I'm all about giving credit. And if somebody else has a better idea than me, great.
So this is where I gotta tell other DMs to check your ego, right? Because a lot of times players will add fantastic lore or fantastic ideas to the settings that we're playing in, right, and the stories that we're telling, especially when it comes to their character, right? They'll be like, well, maybe my parents are still alive, or something silly, right? They buck a trope or. They just come up with I might have a brother in this town or something silly, right? And then you get to play on that story for a little bit. So sitting down and listening to the craziness when they say something that's off out of the blue, the what the hell did you just say? Is extremely empowering for the storytellers, right? And sometimes, as storytellers, we got to remember that it's a collaborative effort, and pushing forward together is going to make sure everyone has much more fun and do what they're doing. And sometimes it's really fun to invoke the craziness, right? And in the sense, the you ask, well, what do you want to do, right? And then you just sit back and listen for a couple seconds. Do you guys do that with your clients at all? Do you ever just like, hey, and what do you think, right? Do you ever just get their big response, and how does it look like for you guys?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, because I never want to tell people what to do, I want to find out information and then kind of I give options, right? So I'm always asking questions. What kind of lifestyle do you want? Is there a specific place that you want to live? Is there weather? Is there culture? Is there those things? What do you like? What don't you like? Because a lot of times when people think about, oh, what do I like? What do I want? Oh, I don't know what I want, but I know what I don't want. And so sometimes that knowing what we don't want is just as important as what we do want. And then it's getting kind of all of that information from them and then putting it together and coming up with some ideas and saying, hey, this is an option or this is an option. And then they can pick, or they say what they do like and don't like about those, and then going on from there.
So
Because there
before
is no one simple solution. I mean, everything can go many ways.
This is true. And to kind of before we jump over to Jeremy, I'm gonna tangent on this one a little bit because one of the important things that we teach in our systems, right, is that after act review. Anyone in the army's heard this before, right? The good, the bad, the ugly of every session, so you can adapt and change and move along. If you're fortunate enough to have a playing group that text each other off time when they're just friends talking or BSing or sharing memes or whatever, right, is your communication method. Those are fantastic environments to ask those questions. That way they can be implemented ahead of time and make sure that they can be woven in, or someone can be like, hey, we said this like 4 weeks ago, right? Having receipts, quote unquote, when you're dealing with the crazy is always a fantastic thing to have. And I'll get back to that in a second. But Jeremy, what about you? Where are you at on this? Before the receipts.
Uh, yeah. So I'm generally helping shift strategies. Like guys, you think about a guy in a relationship. My wife is mad at me, and I don't know why. I don't know what I do, and I can't sit there. Well, what do you think you should do? What do you think the answer? How do you feel you could? If you did know the answer, what would you? And it's like no, because if he knew that, he'd already be doing it. And it really is, how can you appreciate the absolute force of nature that you are married to that currently wants to set you on fire, loves you but wants to set you on fire, and she's not wrong for that, and how do we fix that? And it's like, all right, cool, so we're spitballing some fundamental strategies and some understandings and some underpinnings, then we're baselining stuff, because it's the more we can take out fault, blame, guilt, shame, the more we can take judgment out. My only question for my clients is simple: is do you want to be right or do you want to get results? Okay, cool. What have you done so far? What was the result of that? How's that working for you? Awesome. It's not. Okay, what are you doing different? Because you're alive, she's alive. Cool. What's the feedback? What are you being told doesn't work? Because if it worked, you'd be getting what you wanted, and you're not. So she's still mad enough to tell you. She still cares. Calibrate. So the same idea when I'm dealing with the crazy people, how can I anchor in? How can I validate their creativity, spontaneity, energy, perspective? What's the good parts that I can appreciate out of that? And how can I guide that back into the larger experience of wherever we're going? Like, how can I guide that back to like a true north? That's why I gotta know that in the first place. So if you had it all your way, how would you have it? Let's write that down. Kind of the same thing Sally is saying is, and just like her, well, I don't know what I want. Okay, what would you fricking absolutely hate? Like set your feet on fire, burn it all down. Oh, it'd be these things. Okay, cool. Now we know there's some passion. We can flip the polarity into what you would love once we, because for a lot of people, scarcity is easier than abundance. What I don't want is so much easier than, well, okay, then what do you want? Well, I don't know. Okay, what would you hate to have? Oh, yeah. And they can give you 20, 30 minutes, an hour of just litany of stuff. Cool. Think about all that energy you spent on what you didn't want. Now let's go to what you do want. It's a lot more fun. And then we'll build you the systems to get there and maintain it too.
So again, an excellent proof of that is that like you can 100% ask players, hey, what do you want to do next? And they will stare at you blankly for the next 10 minutes, right? Trying to think of what they want to do. But if you say, hey, do you want to go to this cave? They'll be, the cave sounds scary. We're not going to the cave. And you go, okay, where would you like? And so would you like to go to a tavern? Would you like to go to wherever, right? And if you limit their options to where they do and they get a positive reaction out of one of the other ones, then you can push your story forward. I know for open concept campaigns like mine, I struggle with this a lot, like personally, just because like I like to give them the freedom of choice. But just like you said, abundance can be scary, right? When you only have three choices, well, okay, we're gonna pick one of the three. If you have 5,000 choices, oh, that's a lot, right? And as someone who tells these stories, I get it. Sometimes it's on purpose to invoke the characters want to be like, where are we building? What are we talking about? What is the direction you want to go? And I need to hear that confirmation, so I'm not just railroading a story. Because railroading is good, right, in storytelling and communication, but it can also be very, very limiting, as that is what it is supposed to do, right? It's a railroad for a reason. But that's not how everyone always vibes, right? So, with all that said, um, when you are asking the what the heck did you want, what is like the worst thing that you have heard from that? Like, what is your worst crazy that you've gotten while dealing with one of your clients? That ended in a negative result, and then I'm going to ask you a question of a positive result.
I have one that I didn't work with him.
Okay.
I did a welfare check.
Okay.
And it was there was a guy who had schizophrenia who was off his meds and thought his kids had been killed and replaced with exact duplicate clones. And as he's going through the thing, it's like got him talking, got his address, et cetera, called the local police to do a welfare check because he is off his medication, he is schizophrenic, he doesn't have access to his children, and he needs institutional support. Like that is beyond there's no amount of coaching when we're dealing with that level of neurology. Um so the only thing I could do there is get someone to check on him. And I don't know where it went after that because they're not going to call me back. It's out of state. It's all these things and HIPAA violations and whatever. So I have had a situation that it was like this guy's off his rockers and he needs to be away from his kids because he may do something drastic and dangerous and permanent to them simply because he's got this idea that he can't let go of. Um, so that was an intake I did one time and it was like alarm bells are going off and I'm like, I got to stay in rapport with him so I don't freak him out, but I got to get him checked on.
Gotcha. Well, that's a very solid thing to talk about, especially in our community. Sometimes people do go off the rocker. They do forget their meds, right? We like to tell you to check on your friends and make sure they're doing okay, right? Things get dark for people sometimes. All of a sudden, they have no money and things are going real bad for them, and the dark thoughts creep in, right? So it's always important to check on your friends. But the disadvantage for a lot of our community is they're not next to each other. So being okay with calling in a welfare check is an extremely important thing that you can do, right?
Mhm.
Just as a side note, Sally, back to you. What's your worst experience with the crazy?
Well, mine was he didn't become a client because when we were talking about he was like, I don't want to pay any taxes at all. And I said, okay, like it can be done legally, but you're going to have to live in certain countries that are not, like territorial tax, so you don't make money in that country, and you have to have your stuff set up in other countries. And he wasn't happy with any of the countries, didn't want to live in any of the countries. He's like, well, I'm just not gonna, I'm from the U.S. and I'm just gonna move, and I'm just not gonna file my taxes then. And I'm like, that's called tax evasion. Like that's illegal. I am not going to be involved in that because there's ways that we can do this legally. Now, if you absolutely want zero, then there's limitations. If you're willing to pay a little bit, you have a little more option. But I'm not going to be looking over my shoulder, being concerned, being involved in illegal stuff when I know that there's ways that it can be done the right way. And there's some people that just don't care. I guess and I just said, well, if that's the way you want to be, then that's your choice. I don't recommend it because that is tax evasion and you can get caught and go to jail and get fined and have a lot more problems than just setting things up the right way and doing it right. So that is just a road I don't want to be involved with or going down.
That's 100% fair. Understand completely. Dealing with those crazies every once in a while, right? It can be hard. So going back to theater audiences that they think they know what they're talking about or what they're doing, and they get on that. Hey, this is the exact thing I want to do, and it needs to be a perfect way. Us as DMs, we're allowed to say no, right? We're allowed to be like, this is our story. Politely fuck off. And it's important to remember that, right? Being able to tell your clientele to fuck off every once in a while is a strong position to take, but a necessary one at times, right? Um, but to digress from that, let's go with the positive. One of you guys got that crazy in a group or a singular person that just like, wow, this worked out really well for the both of us.
I had a client couple that were kind of, they seemed to be initially on different pages of what they wanted. He really wanted to reduce his taxes a lot. He preferred like really low, ideally zero corporate taxes. They did want to relocate, but where they were relocating to, she wanted Europe. He said it's no, it's too high in tax and things like that. And ultimately, we got them to agree and move to Italy. So he makes substantial money. So he pays €100,000 flat tax, so which is really reduced from what he was paying. And they're living in Italy, which is, obviously Europe. She's happy. So now that she's happy, he's happy. And even though they were initially, when they came in, they were like, we're never going to agree. This isn't going to work. But I'm like, there's always options. Sometimes we have to, a bit of a give and take, but there's ways to figure things out so everybody is happy. And luckily we figured that out for them, and they enjoy being in Italy, and he's happy paying way less taxes, and his wife is happy, which makes him happy, and it's worked out.
Fantastic. That's a great story. I like hearing that. Jeremy, what about you?
Yeah, I'm thinking I had some people in some crazy situations. So one of the things I do is I'm in a bunch of men's groups, and one of them, we have a mental response team basically, and we filter all the posts because we have, we're not letting guys in to ask for money. Um, we have a variety of like kind of like flags, and so we had a guy that messaged in, and he's in a very precarious mental place. Hasn't been able to sleep for about the last 2 years, and he's seeing a psychiatrist, seeing a psychologist. He's on medication. He's got the disability. He's got the, but he can't sleep, and he's in not a great place. And so I was like, yeah, let me connect with him. Let me talk with him. And what ended up happening was he had been in a car accident a couple of years prior, which messed him up. He got T-boned, the car rolled, and his 3-year-old was ejected from the vehicle and was fine.
Okay.
Just want to put that in before we go anywhere. She was in a 5-point harness. She was secured, but the car rolled, and so she got tossed out. He blacked out. So he comes to, and he's got to crawl through the vehicle's on its hood. He's got to crawl through it to the sound of her screaming, and he's crawling through glass. No idea what's going on. And when she sees him, she stops. Like, she sees her daddy. Everything's fine. Well, he had been replaying the car crash for the last 2 years. Every night when he goes to bed. So even though he's on Ambien, he can only sleep about an hour a night, and he's just literally exhausted. 2 years of no sleep, 17 medications, like all the different things, doing all the standard stuff. And I was like, okay, I appreciate where you're at. This is effing ridiculous. Stand up. And like, I got him to get back in touch with himself and his respect, because he's been punishing himself and beating himself down for what actually didn't happen. Your daughter's alive, right? Oh yeah, she's fine. She's 5 now. Okay, cool. And she's all scarred up and damaged. Well, no. And she's got all janky and surgeries like you did. Well, no. Oh, so the car did its job. You did your job. And when she saw you, she relaxed. Oh yeah, I guess that's true. And so I hammered on him for about 40 minutes to an hour, and we reframed the way he was relating to it, the story he was telling himself. And then we went after the actual memories and shifted some of the memories around, so that now when he closes his eyes and tries to replay the car crash, all he sees is the tension around her eyes drop when she sees her dad, and the pride that she has, that's my daddy. That's what he goes to sleep with now. And so being able to have the skills and the tools and the abilities to have that conversation just done through Zoom and rewire his memories so that he can give himself forgiveness, because he had been carrying his own judgment of what didn't happen but could have. And so he's been punishing himself so he'll never make that mistake again. And when we got done, like, I followed up with him a week later, and he's like, my 2-year-old, because he had another daughter. He's like, my 2-year-old now has a dad who can smile. And I'm like, dude. And he's still got to deal with the surgeries and lawsuits and all kinds of crap because the lady was going way too fast and T-boned him. But I got him to the point he was able to laugh about the car crash, and now he looks 5 times left and right instead of 3. because that's ultimately what happened. She was doing 55 and a 25, and he misjudged the turn to go in, and so she T-boned him as he was coming through the intersection. I'm like, you did everything right, dude. You couldn't have controlled that she was going so fast. And so helping him to get that forgiveness where he's in this crazy, judgmental, dark, painful place, and to bring light and playfulness and openness back to that. Yeah, that's one of the coolest things.
That's
a fantastic story. Yeah, I mean that's the stuff you hope for when you're working with people, right? So thanks for that. That made this show way better. I was scared with a 3-year-old going out the window. I was like, oh man, it's getting dark real fast. So great, so happy now.
No, she's good. That's why I framed that. Yeah, no, she's fine. Just put that in now. She's fine.
So
actually, funny piece, real quick is.
Sure.
When he was in the ER and they were pulling glass out of his shoulder that night, she was dancing the hokey pokey, waiting on him in the room while they're pulling shards of glass out of his shoulder. She was completely unfazed by the entire experience, and he had forgotten that memory until we talked.
It's cute. Well, I don't think I can outdo that story, but I do have one of similar rapport in a positive speak, and this is something I've actually talked about on this podcast way back season 1, season 2, and it's about a skeleton and a catapult, right? And we talked about our you want to do what? And dealing with positive silliness, right? We're at this point in a story where we have to storm a castle, right? We have no friends, no allies, no nothing, right? But we've captured a trebuchet from a bunch of guards that were transporting it, right? So we have a trebuchet and there's 4 of us. Yeah, great. What are we going to do with the trebuchet? We can get ammo. Okay, ammo, piling up ammo, use some magic, make some rocks. Great. We can get within range. All right, we can do that. As soon as we fire this thing, they're going to come get us. There's only 4 of us, and that's a whole castle, right? So our wizard's like, well, what if we just turn one of these yahoos into a zombie and have him catapult, and we'll run off and cause havoc somewhere else, right?
Nice.
And they did. They were like, okay, make a zombie. The command is pick up rock, load trebuchet, fire trebuchet. Continue until you die. This skeleton made it, we rolled dice on it, his whole 8 hours. So until the spell ended, this skeleton was out there just catapulting. Now, to be fair, the group did set out a whole bunch of traps and all kinds of other things to like make sure they didn't just pile drive the poor little skeleton monster. But 8 hours of trebucheting on a castle that was just like unexpected trebuchet, right? They were just like, oh yeah, it's good. We're just gonna lock it down. They did not lock it down. The hero succeeded because of a wizard going, well, why don't we just, turn this guy into a skeleton? That way, when they finally like give up on the doors and try to run out, we just walk in. And that's exactly what they did, right? They opened their own door with the skeleton trebuchet. We went back to the thing later to see how goofed up the trebuchet was, and it was. They eventually took it down, right? But I think they lost 2 squads of knights or something silly due to the traps that were set up. We did rolls for it and whatnot. And the skeleton, total hero, talked about for the rest of the campaign. It's an idea that members of that group will bring to other people. The skeleton trebuchet is a great combo. No, stop. You break games. But it was a very positive experience of you wanted craziness at the table, because no one would have thought to do that out of the blue, right? It was very much, well, we're going to have to sacrifice a party member to stand here and do this for however long, right? And then maybe they'll get away, and then we'll be able to push forward as a group of yahoos. Didn't have to. It was great. So that's a positive spin on a bit of craziness. So to jump more into the dealing with stuff in a positive manner, right? How do you guys react when someone gives you, and this is just on a personal level, kind of going back into how you behave with things. How do you react when someone says something off the wall to you, right? Something that it just like pings that trigger in your head, whatever that is for you. How do you generally react? Is it a calm fury, or is it yelling instantaneously, or somewhere in between?
I'm pretty calm. I mean, at first, if it stings, I'll acknowledge the sting and be like, "Ooh, that kind of hurt." But then think about it, right? Is it true? And most times, if it stings, it's because it is true, or at least partially true. And then, like why did they say it? What's the situation? What did I do? And or how can I fix it and make it better? I always think there's a silver lining to every situation, and it may be hard to see at first, and sometimes we have to take a step back and look at it. But I do believe that we are all responsible somewhat for everything. And we need to take that responsibility and find the silver lining. Like, but with that being said, I don't believe in failure. I believe in learning experience. And there's been things that it's cost me a lot to learn, and it's cost me a long time to learn, but I've learned, and I'm always learning, and I'm always trying new things. So if somebody says, and somebody could say to me, one time my daughter said to me, many years ago. She's like, Mommy, you're all, because I was talking with a friend of opening a restaurant when I was living in Costa Rica. And she says, Mommy, you're always talking about doing new things. And I said, well, and at first it's kind of like, oh, yeah, that's right. But then I said to her, I said, but there's always opportunity, and it's always good to look into it and check into it, because not all opportunity is good for me. Somebody else bought the restaurant, took it over, they did well. But I was like, but we have to look at opportunities and things and see if it's right for us and try new things to see if we like it or not. And so, that it did kind of sting that little bit, because she was right that I'm always looking at trying new things and doing different things, and I've done so much. But at the flip side, I've learned so much from all of those things as well.
There's a great line from Pablo Picasso. He says, I'm always doing impossible things. That's how I learned to do them. And I love that frame, because it's like, oh yeah, it is impossible until I learn, and then it's not. It's possible. It's my reality. Yeah, that's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I have lots of deflections. I can just say, oh, that's interesting. I can say, thanks for sharing. That's a point of view. That's a perspective, right? I could just acknowledge it. Doesn't mean I agree with it. Doesn't mean I accept it, but I can acknowledge it. I can validate it. Cool. And then I can mull it over or whatever. I don't really have much in the way of triggers or delicate areas. I'm like, hey, feedback is awesome. I may agree, I may not, but you got a shot. Throw it. Let's see what comes out. I could take a punch.
I
Yeah.
wholeheartedly agree with that. One of our big things is all criticism is just allowing me to grow, right? Whether I agree with the
Mm-hmm.
criticism or there's a reason behind what I did, doesn't make
Yeah,
the
it's all
criticism
feedback.
exactly, right.
Mhm.
Talking about that opportunity at all times, right? We go back into our storytelling bit. There's always opportunity to make sure that someone is having a good time, right? If they mention going drinking and throwing dwarves at a wall, you can have them go do that, right? It might be a silly diversion from them fighting the big evil overlord, but sometimes that's what your players need, is just some silly shenanigans with other characters in the world, right? To
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they're enjoying it. Now, sometimes you're restricted on time, and you're like, "Hey, look, we're only doing this for a single session. You only have a few minutes left. You probably want to go fight the big bad guy before we, wrap it up for the week." But that doesn't mean they might appreciate the dwarf throwing more than the slaying the big bad evil guy, and you can do that later, right? Set it for later. Wahaha. Uh, but kind of on that. What about when uh, you have to tell them no, right? You've talked about deflections quite a bit, right? And cool, that's great. But what about when it's like they are not going with what you want without your driven perspective? Like this is the best, easiest course of the action, and they are adamantly refusing, right? Where do you how do you handle that with your stuff? We're going to start with Jeremy this time.
Are we talking gaming particularly? Because then you just have them get eaten by something unexpectedly.
Look, I like that answer, but
I
no, more in your perspective. What do you do? I think an easy one for you would be dealing with kids, right? That's what
yeah.
comes to mind
So
when I talk
so
about it.
you know what? I would love to do that. That would be fantastic. It was up to me, but unfortunately, it's not. There's other schedules and there's other things on top of us. So here's the deal. You get this last conversation, and you can either do this willingly, or I can make it massively painful and you will remember this the rest of your life. It's your choice which adventure you have. I'm just here to facilitate. And so your consequences are on your head now. So do you want me to go to a level 9 or a level 10 and drop the hammer? Or do you want me to go back down to a 5 or a 3? Because I'd rather be lower energy, but we don't have any more time. You have 10 seconds to decide your fate, or I will decide it for you. And
Well,
then here's the timer.
my daughter hates the counting. Just Cannot stand it.
Mine does too. Mine
Oh,
does too. But should I get off the pot, kid? Love you, but you gotta. Time is not infinite. Time is finite.
nice. Okay, good to know. As a side note, I've gotten to the I'm going to internally count to 10, so she doesn't have to hear the numbers, and that seems to have her. She still reacts as if I'm counting, and there's less crying and upsetness about hearing the number 7. Uh,
You're
but
nice. I give 3. Like,
yeah. Sometimes it's a 3 count. Yeah, it just depends on the situation. 10's generally pretty good though.
mm,
You know what I mean? Especially if they have to move
yeah,
from one location to another.
I can
Um,
tickle you.
that's a positive one. I like that. So with jumping over to Sally. Sally, what about you? What about when you just got a client that had just like again going back to I want to pay nothing and do nothing without telling them completely to go fuck themselves. What is another route that you might take with someone that's a little bit more flexible than
Well,
most
I
would be?
mean, with that one, it was basically you can, I'll say to people, you can do whatever you want. There's consequences to everything, whether consequences can be good. You do it the right way, you save your taxes, or you do it the wrong way, and you could potentially go to jail. Like there's a right, it's totally up to you. But one that's a little bit different right now is I have a very good friend of mine who's on leave from work because it's a super toxic place. So she's on stress leave and she's been talking about starting her own business. And every time I see her, I talk to her and she'll do one thing and then she'll pull back. And then she'll do like 2 or 3 more things. And then she'll be like, ooh. But she's finally admitted, she's just like, I'm scared. What if it doesn't work? And I said, what if it does work? I said, look at our two lifestyles. Like I've been self-employed forever and almost my whole working life, and she's gone the corporate route. And we've talked about it, and she's like, yeah, I have what they call the golden handcuffs, because if I can do it another 20 years, I'll have a large retirement, all of this stuff. And I said to her, I said, can you do it another 20 years? And let's be honest. I said, what if you're just doing something you like? Or you get another job and you start this business part-time, and these are things that you enjoy doing and you love doing it and do it every day anyway, where you can make it a business. It just makes more sense. And so we talk about it every time I see her, quite often, and she'll do 1 or 2 things and then she pulls back and she does more. But I just say to her, I said, it's either step by step you do it. I said, this is your life. It's your life. Like I'm living mine. I'm doing mine. I'm good. So what do you want? Of course there's fear. And she's like, but you're not scared of anything. You just go do it. I said, there's lots of things I'm scared of, but I just know if it doesn't work out, I'll find another way, or it just wasn't meant to be that way or this time. But you have to look at fear and do it anyway. Like if you've ever learned to ride a bicycle, it was a little scary at first. And when they took the training wheels off and we fell down and we got up again. And when we learned to walk, how many times did we fall down and we got up again? And how many skinned knees did we have from falling out of a tree, but we climbed the tree again? I said, those are just learning experiences. And it's your life. You either want to do it or you go back to the corporate job, which is going to cause you to have a heart attack or something like that because it was that bad for her.
Well,
And your choice.
so side note about bikes, I gotta tell a funny story just for the lulz. Personal story of me as a child. First time when I learned to ride a bike, and the first time we took off the training wheels and whatnot, I crashed into my father's truck, just straight up, right, just straight into it because I didn't know how to stop. That was my stopping method, was using the truck, right? And there was a dent in that truck forever because every time my dad saw it, he busted out giggling, right? Traumatic experience for me because it was running into a truck full speed, and I was apparently very upset about the truck having the dent. But it turned out to be a positive experience because like it didn't hurt, right? I think I had skin knee or something like that, but I didn't die, right, running into something. So like now on vehicles, the chances of getting hurt while doing things doesn't stop me from doing them, right? Because it allowed me to refocus that mindset for the you'll get through it one way or the other. You'll figure out how to do the brakes, or you're crashing into the truck, right? So going into the story bits of that, sometimes that's how you get to treat your players, right? You throw a dragon at them, and you either fight the dragon and have a bad day, or have a good day, or you run for your life and deal with the dragon chasing you the entire way, right? So throwing your characters into those kind of situations, especially earlier on when they're not ready for it, if they win, they become in their own head superheroes, essentially, right? And molding them to enjoy much more fantastical stories and deal with greater threats. But if they lose, it was just, that's how it had to be, right? And you get to do a story makeup like it was all a dream, or he didn't actually eat you because one of you farted or something in his face and he flew off. It was raunchy. Someone saved your life with bad eggs. Those kind of things, right? So, saying all that silliness for a story, is there what would you guys say is your personal truck in the road, right? Your personal thing that you just collided into that pushed you into a mindset that it's okay to fail. Because both of you have talked about it a bit.
I guess for me, for me, life is short. I mean, I look at it two ways. You can live to, let's say, you're 100 years old. And if you're having a good time and you're loving it, it's short. And if you're hating it and miserable, it's really long. So even if you have the same amount of time, it can be long or it can be short. But also, I just generally think it's short because we never know when our time is up. And I've dealt with death from a very young age, with starting at my father when I was 6, family, cousins, my husband, friends, boyfriends, lots. And so for me, it's almost like there's somebody every few years in my life that passes. And so it's almost that reminder of, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. And I say it often to my friends, like, I could be hit by a bus tomorrow and it'll suck because there's still many things I want to do. But there's also a part of me that if I did get hit by a bus tomorrow, I really wouldn't be that upset because even though I've had a lot of hard things and tough times, they've made me who I am. But I've had such a great life and I've done so many things, and I've got a beautiful daughter and so many great things that part of me thinks I've done more at this age already than a lot of people ever do in their entire life. Um, so I'm grateful for that, and it just makes me like, you know, so what if it doesn't work? So what if somebody writes comments about me, somebody that I don't know, they went out of their way to make a comment about me or a post or whatever. I mean, how bad is your life if you're watching my stuff and making negative comments? Like, you must be in not a great spot. And life happens. And if, I make some mistakes and it costs me money, well, it's just money. Anybody can make more money and lose more money. We only have so much time. I think time is our most important asset that we'll ever have, and use it wisely. And there's no such thing as perfect. Nobody's life is perfect. We all have challenges. We learn from them, and you have to just, like, live your life, whatever that is for each individual person.
Nice. Okay. Jeremy, I'm jumping over
Right.
to you. What you got for us?
Yeah, the only people that can pull you down are already below you. So if they're trying to be crabs in a bucket, okay, cool. Thanks for sharing, dude. It's
Damn,
so easy to disassociate from that.
I love that line. The only people that can drag you down are people below you. Whoo!
Yeah.
Whoo!
give that to a room full of sixth graders or fifth graders, and they start looking at each other sideways because it's like, oh, because it's like, who's doing the pulling? And it's like, well, I'm not pulling you down, I'm pushing you down, I'm above you. And it's like, are you really? It makes for a very interesting. I used to do school assemblies. It makes for some very interesting looks. For me, I mean, I'm at the point now in my life, like, I've been essentially a warrior monk forever, like more time in the martial arts than not. And our tradition comes from Zen Buddhism. It comes from the Shaolin warrior monks. And so for the monks, it's all energy. We as people are positive energy occupying space moving forward through time. And the only thing you lose if you're alive is your ignorance, right? And that's the three big problems is greed, ignorance, and fear. But really, ignorance and fear, greed and fear are just versions of ignorance. So when you lose the ignorance, you gain this insight, you gain this wisdom. Fastest way is conflict. Fastest way is whatever you got to say. Throw the damn punch. Just get it out. Like people will sit there and they'll hem and haw and pontificate and try to come at it the right way. I'm like, don't worry about hurting my feelings. Just say what you got to say. It's okay. I can take it. Like it's not personal. You're telling me something important in your model of the world. Fantastic. Throw the damn punch. Because then that energy is out. What you keep inside dies with you. What you give away, you get to keep because you get to experience it. And so, what is there to be afraid of? Fear is fuck everything and run, or face everything and rise. And we talk about failure. There is no failure. There's just feedback. Failure is first attempt in learning. Okay, but I've been doing this a long time. Great. So you have further information in learning, further impact in learning, because you're just not getting to your result. Cool. What are you not doing the same way again? Make a change. What should I change? I don't know. Something. Just don't do it that way because that gave you the result. Do it again and hope and pray it changes is stupid.
So,
and so it's getting that feedback loop. So like throw that punch. Damn, that sucked. I'm alive. I learned. Cool.
I love all that, by the way. But I do have to say, in my realm, there is failure. You roll a 1 on a dice, and you're done. Game over. Have a bad day. You roll a 2 or a 3 on the dice and don't have a good numbers for it. You do fail, the thing you're trying to do. And sometimes you do the action again and hope for a better number, right? Those things in our line, in our storytelling, in the games we play, those are the times that it works. But I 100% agree. Real life, that's a much better way to look at it. As a silly side question before we kind of wrap things up, you talked about Shaolin monks. What's your favorite quote-unquote monk weapon?
Like in real life, it would be the long staff
Okay.
because it there's so much you can do with it in like a single head. We there's single head, double head dragon. So single head because you've got when you're fighting long range this way with a chopstick, you have so much more ability to deny the other person battle space. When you go to double hand, you've now cut your battle space and you have less reaction time and you're forced into a closer combat situation. So long staff gives you the most flexibility. In our system, we have long staff and double knives, which equates to all empty hand weapons besides thrown and flexible, which don't really fit into the Buddhist metaphysics, which is why they didn't study them. But yeah, so long staff.
Fantastic answer. So for all my monk players out there, that's why you single hand things.
Mhm.
So, side note, finishing up, we're going to do final thoughts and kind of do our last little bit of promo because we're right about at the hour point here. We're going to just start with final thoughts and then for both of you, and then we'll do the final promo. Sound good for you guys? And you guys get to hear me rant about my stuff that we're doing this weekend. So Sally, we'll start with you. Final thoughts on you want to do what?
You want to do what? Go do it. Why are you waiting? Why haven't you done it yet?
Nice. All right, I like it. Concise. It's good. Jeremy, what about you?
So in that moment of opportunity, if you trade expectation for appreciation, what could you appreciate in that moment and expand?
There we go.
You want to do what? Dude, I love that. Let's do that. What?
There we go. So dealing with your party in the most positive manner. That's an excellent ending to this episode. So thank you very much. So where do we find you guys? One more time. We're going to start with Jeremy this time and end with Sally.
Well, I wrote Your Best Child Ever Is This Game Worth Winning? The only parenting book with a money back guarantee. You can find it on Amazon. You can have me 5.5 hours in your head giving you guidance and ideas. And they're all short, simple chapters, and they're all games you can win. I'm the only Jeremy Roderick on the internet. I'm most active on Facebook. I have tons of free content. And if you want to make your life better, you want to go further, farther, faster, don't do the 40 years of DIY. Just hire someone and don't climb the ladder. Just jump to the top. It saves time.
Solid. All right, Sally.
All right, perfect. So my name is Sally Peterson. You can find me at globalcitizenlife.org. If you want to move internationally, I can help you out. I've lived in 5 different countries. I've visited like almost 50 already. I do have a book called International Money Mastery. It is on Amazon. And if you keep an eye on the website, we do have a summit that we're planning probably for the end of June. So it'll be coming up to talk about, reducing taxes, asset protection, moving abroad, opening up bank accounts in other countries, and everything you need to be a global citizen.
Fantastic. I love all that. For us on our end, it's still May, right? So it's still Mom 907 for the 10% code off on our website for all of our fun stuff. Other things, we have an event this weekend in North Pole. We're hanging out with Santa, doing Santa's cruising, except for we're going to be inside the North Pole Mall, not outside with all the other vendors. They're going to be hot. We're going to have air conditioning. Wahaha. Come hang out with us, play games, buy dice, all the other fun stuff that you can do with the Epic Sages there. Other than that, I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend. You haven't talked to your mom, it's still not too late. Give her a call. With that, with Adventure in Mind, have a wonderful time. If you two guests will stick around and we'll talk afterwards. Thank you guys so much. Maybe if I can find the button here. Bye.